Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. A billboard has been erected near Centurion by an NGO Avaaz. They're calling for President Cyril Ramaphosa to arrest Russian President Vladimir Putin in August when he attends the BRICS summit. It all came after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant against Putin for the war crime of abducting Ukrainian children. As an ICC signatory, South Africa has a legal duty to arrest Putin if he visits the country. Let's get more on this. We're joined by Fadi Quran, the campaign director at Avaaz. Fadi, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Perhaps let's start right at the beginning. Start off by explaining what the billboard campaign is essentially about.
Well, as you just mentioned, investigations indicate that President Putin is responsible for pushing his military and different actors within his security forces to abduct thousands of Ukrainian children. And this is a war crime under international law. And consequently, there's now a warrant for President Putin's arrest. Now, South Africa, to maintain its legacy as a leader in the human rights space, has a responsibility to arrest Putin if he steps on South African soil. And this campaign, we've targeted the main highways that President Ramaphosa and members of the government take on their way to work every day to remind them of the importance of this moment and that they should not be rolling out the red carpet for a war criminal.
A lot of the questions that have been asked, essentially looking at social media, what people are asking is why the big focus on South Africa arresting Vladimir Putin when so many other war criminals are essentially roaming the streets freely because, this question keeps coming up so frequently on social media.
Well, what I will say is the human rights organization and movement that I'm a part of, Avaaz, we have targeted the United States and leaders including U.S. former President George Bush and British Prime Minister Tony Blair for their war crimes. We've also targeted war criminals, whether in Sudan or in other parts of the world. And we believe that integrity necessitates that all war criminals are held accountable whenever the opportunity arises. And I'm personally from Palestine, and I would love to see Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu arrested with members of his government for committing the crime of apartheid here in Palestine. And so we are pursuing all of those cases. In this specific case, South Africa actually has an opportunity that is rare, where a war criminal, Putin, has said that he wants to travel to South Africa. And that's why at this specific moment, it would be crucial for South Africa, again, to maintain its legacy and to protect an international order that is actually fair, not a selective international order like the U.S. has sought to push forward, by going forward and showing that they're going to hold war criminals and President Putin accountable. And it would be wonderful for South Africa to also take the initiative with other African nations and global nations to arrest other war criminals. And we've actually worked in many cases with the South African government to push that strong stance internationally. But again, this is a specific opportunity because Putin is planning to travel to South Africa, and the red carpet shouldn't be rolled out for him.
You're quite right. It would be wonderful. But what do we know at the moment about South Africa's, the South African government's position? They seem crystal clear that they will not arrest Putin, and diplomatic immunity has even been extended. What do you make of this position?
Well, we've been speaking with key legal figures and experts in South Africa, and they've all told us that the government's position is actually a misinterpretation of South African law. Immunity can be provided, diplomatic immunity can be provided when dignitaries visit a country and commit things like traffic violations or other type of minor violations. But when we are speaking about international atrocities, let's remember again, without politicizing this case, what's actually at stake here. Every parent listening knows how horrifying it is to lose their child even for 5 minutes in a grocery store. So imagine now thousands of Ukrainian parents that don't know where their children are, don't know when they're going to get them back, and a situation where President Putin has given the green light for that abduction. Now, where the ANC, I believe, should stand, their position of non-alignment, of not taking sides politically in this conflict, is actually a wise position. But the non-aligned position hits a brick wall when we speak to occupation, when we speak to violations of basic universal values and human dignity. And that's why I would argue that although the government statements currently indicate that they do not want to take action, I believe that the law, and most importantly South Africa's strategic interests, will require it to take action if President Putin visits.
Yeah, so much so, that South Africa is reportedly, according to those close to the matter and familiar with the matter, that they are considering switching the venue of the upcoming summit. And, we could see a time where South Africa is not even hosting it in South Africa. But with the billboards that you've put out on the streets, what impact are you hoping to make? And perhaps the momentum that you're trying to create?
Well, our understanding is that President Ramaphosa and the current South African government want to be, and are acting in a way to be, global leaders in creating a multilateral global system, one that is not beholden by selective interests of the United States or other Western countries, but also one that is not defined by power interests of countries that are run by dictators and individuals who harm and murder their own citizens. And for South Africa to actually achieve that position of global leadership, for South Africa to protect its legacy as a beacon for human rights, we believe that these billboards will ensure that President Ramaphosa remembers that responsibility that is on his shoulders, because we are certain that he is being lobbied, and South Africa is being lobbied in ways that are, let's say, unproductive and negative, whether by the Russians or by Western powers that are seeking to push South Africa into their arena. And these billboards seek to, remind President Ramaphosa that he can stand above the fray and actually do something that will be transformational, not just for the Ukrainian children that have been abducted, and not just for the case of international justice, but also for the position of South Africa in the world.
Very well. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time there, Fadi Quran, the campaign director at Avaaz.